Thank you, Angie. Thank you for this opportunity that you've given us to be part of the GoPro Summit. And I want to just share in a line, our organization works with women and children who've been abused and have gone through difficult circumstances in their life. So we have a team of counselors who work with them and walk with them for many years, journey with them. And our desire is to build the capacity of the church so that they can care for those who are suffering. So this is the opportunity that you have given for us to be a blessing to the people who are working with children, the workers that work with children. So thank you. So I want to hand over this session to Rabina. Rabina's been on the field, on the ground, been counseling for more than 15 years now, and she's a very much vital part of our organization. So over to Rabina. I'll
Thank you,
share.
Alita. Yeah.
You can make her, highlight her. Yeah.
Just want to thank all of you for giving us this opportunity. And as I was thinking about this program, I thought that God is in this. And that is why all of us are there. So today we want to talk about trauma and understand what is trauma. These days, trauma is spoken of very loosely. And everybody says, I'm traumatized, I'm traumatized. But really understanding what trauma is going to be the first session all about. We'll move to the next slide. And it's a difficult topic. So I want to start by using the scripture where God says he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. And these days I've been reading the book of Job, and it gives me so much comfort to know that in our brokenness, God doesn't abandon us. And the children who work, with whom we work are so precious in His sight. And I think that is the lens through which we need to start our journey of work with the children, because they are all so precious. And it's very comforting to know that He is above us all and He has called us to this amazing work. So there are two things we are going to do. We will understand what is trauma in the first session, and we will understand what are the principles of trauma-informed care. Because if we are not able to really understand that, I think we will traumatize our children more by the words we use and by the non-communication also. Many times we do not communicate with words, but our eyes and the way we look at them, and our body language says that, oh, don't think too great about yourself. So we want to look at all those aspects which we may be subtly doing, which may not be really right. So my question that I want to pose is, what comes to your mind when you hear the word? Maybe a few of you can put it in the chat box. The clients I work with also say that there is trauma. Yeah, painful, something very painful. Anybody else? Emotionally broken. Yeah, I think that's great to know. It's a deep wound. Trauma is a deep, deep wound, which is not very visible to us. So there are various terrible experiences. Yeah, there are various definitions which people use to understand what trauma is. And the simplest thing, the way to remember what trauma is, that it's a deep wound in us, not a physical one, but an emotional one. The physical wound may be visible, but the emotionally deep wound may not be visible. Yeah. Go to the next slide. Now, I wanted to actually do an activity with all of you, but I think for lack of time, we will park this deep breathing to the end. And when I decide whether I want to do the activity and get you to do the deep breathing. So we will look at the definition of trauma. So, okay, before that, why should we understand trauma? Because we want to understand trauma so that we can help definitely the survivors that need help. When we jump into the work, in any work, we think we know it, but there are many aspects which we do not know. So we want to understand how we can help them in a better way. We also want to understand trauma because we need to understand that healing happens in the context of relationship. If there is no relationship, I don't think we can really look at bringing healing to somebody's life. So when we are working with children, there is a need for us to build a relationship with them. And it reflects God's heart of compassion for the brokenhearted. Time and again, the Bible is so amazingly bringing out God's compassionate heart, where He shows that He cares. He really cares for those who are going through tough times and He doesn't abandon them. So it shows the heart of God's compassion and to reduce our own risk of being negatively impacted by others' trauma. We as an organization have been working with many clients, children and women who have horrendous stories. And sometimes we do not sleep. We are not able to sleep because we carry it back with us. So what do you do? Because we are human beings and it affects us. It should affect us. If it is not affecting us, then I think there is a problem. I've heard many people say that it should not affect us, but I do not agree with that. And I leave it for you to decide whether it should affect us or not. But I think God is affected when somebody suffers. And if we carry God's heart, we should get affected. But how do we reduce our own risk of being negatively impacted? We don't want to leave our work halfway through. We want to finish that which God has called us for. So that is the reason why we want to understand trauma. So SAMSA, they define it as an event or series of events or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically or emotionally harmful or life-threatening. This is very important to remember that it is perceived by the person as life-threatening and it has lasting adverse effects on the individual's functioning, mental, physical, social, emotional, and spiritual well-being. A simple way to remember is it is anything that negatively impacts the way you see yourself, others, and the world around us. And as I'm doing this workshop, I want you to think of that which is very painful for you. Something that has happened in your life, which is extremely painful in your life. One event which has changed the course of your life and just think about how it has impacted your thoughts of how you look at your own self, how you look at others, and how you look at the world at large. And that's exactly what children go through. So that is trauma. We can move to the next slide. So we'll just look at a case so that it's easy for us to understand whatever we are, in theory learning. So Ima is a 6-year-old girl whose parents recently divorced. She begins attending your Sunday school. Emma frequently complains of stomach aches, but her mother tells you she has no medical issues. She clings to her mother, doesn't want to be dropped off for the class. Although she's good at coloring, she bursts into tears when she makes small mistakes, such as coloring outside the lines. Emma avoids interacting with other children and rarely smiles. Can we just quickly list down a few symptoms that we see in Emma's case? In the chat box, maybe you can write it. Yeah, fear of being left by her mother. The case very clearly says that the parents are divorced. The father is already gone. So there is this child who may be thinking that I will be abandoned by my mother also. Thank you so much for. Maybe she thinks it was her fault that they are divorced. Very true. So many of children think that they are the cause for the problem because the divorce has happened after they have come into this world. Thank you for writing. The world has totally changed. I always tell when I'm doing parenting session that for children, their home is like this safe, large ship in the sea, which is manned by the captain. And as long as the captain is there, the child just sleeps well. But when the captain loses control, the child is traumatized. The perception of the family has changed. Yeah. So these are all symptoms of trauma. She avoids interacting with children. She rarely smiles. Here's a child who has been smiling, but after the divorce, something has changed. She rarely smiles. She who was good at coloring now starts crying even when she makes small mistakes. So the reason why we've put a case study is when we work with children, these are the things that we need to be aware of. If there is a change from the baseline behavior, what are the red flags that we can look at? That should catch our eye and catch our attention, because those are good symptoms which tell us that the child is going through a tough time. I think we will not go through Alex's case because lack of time. So now this is a very good picture for us to understand how a 3-year-old child is impacted by trauma on the brain. There's this picture of a normal child's brain, which is large. And then you see the extremely neglected child whose brain shows that there is a shrinkage in the brain. Yeah. So if the child is going through extreme neglect, there is a change in the brain, in the child's brain, and we will never be aware of it. So sometimes we think that, children are being stubborn, children are being lazy, and, we've all gone through all this. Why can't they? They should be resilient. And we do not really understand what is happening to them. So this is what is happening to a child who's just 3-year-old and their brain changes when there is trauma. Yeah, we can move on. 3 things. The 3 is, this is a very easy way of remembering what is trauma and if there is somebody who's gone through trauma. The 3 E's are the event, the experience, and the effects. Now, sometime back, I asked you to think of that event which changed the course of your life. No? So the event can be a one-time event or it can be multiple events. And how was the experience at that time and what are the effects? These 3 will constitute the magnitude of the trauma that a child is going through. Yeah, can move on. Effects of trauma. Common emotional responses that are seen are fear. We saw in the case also that she starts crying. She may be, somebody said that she may be fearing of abandonment. So there are a lot of fears and children don't have the language. We can articulate what we are going through, but children don't have the language. So they go through a lot of fear. There is guilt. Am I the reason for the problem that's come up? There is isolation, anxiety, shame. Sometimes they numb. When they see that the elders are not able to cope with their emotions, they don't want to show their emotions to the elders because they feel that they are causing them more pain. So they will numb their emotions. There is grief, there is hopelessness, and there is sense of betrayal. These are the common emotional responses seen in a child who's gone through trauma. Then there are cognitive responses. Research says that exposure to violence in the first year of childhood deprives children of as much as 10% of their potential IQ, increased vulnerability to learning and behavior problems by the time children reach school age. Now, I have been a school counselor, and the number of children I have counseled because of dysfunctional families are many. My daughter is a special educator, and she tells me that many of the problems are because of problems at home. So the cognitive responses are all of this. We do not understand the damage that we do to our children when, very subtly we do things and we feel that they will be okay, they'll be resilient. But that's not the truth. Common physical responses are all sorts of aches. Some children constantly have cough and cold because their immune system is very weak. I have a client who has an autoimmune disease, and the problem at her home is so immense that I don't have the solutions to her problem. We don't know how to help her, but she has developed her own uh, immune system has become her enemy. So she has developed autoimmune diseases because of the trauma that she's going. Move to the next slide. These are the long-term impacts of trauma. Even when the child becomes an adult, many of them, when the trauma is not resolved, you will see these symptoms in them. There's hyperarousal. Sometimes you will find some people are very jumpy, very nervous. Uh, Certain mannerisms which you see will it'll help you to understand that okay, this is a very hyper aroused person. And we like to label them, but actually there's a story behind their response. Some of them will go do have re-experience. They'll have intrusive images which keep coming back. That which happened in the past seems to be very real even in the present. The past is not past for them, it's present for them. Sensations, dreams, and memories. A lot of our clients tell us of their dreams, and we actually help them to understand that this is all that you've gone through. And you have to, and we work with them. We help them to share it with us. And when they share it, they're able to connect the dots. Avoidance and withdrawal. They pull away from relationships. They are very scared because their trust has been broken at a very young age. So how on earth will they trust anybody? And most of the time, it's by the person who's supposed to be taking care of. Those people are the ones who have broken their trust. So they pull away from relationships. Sometimes we are just amazed. Why are they like this? We do not understand. But this is the reason that they will withdraw. They will not go to certain places. They'll tell me, Didi, I don't want to go to that place. They will avoid some places. And they will avoid activities that trigger memories of traumatic events. Simple example is if suppose I've gone by a train and met with an accident. Next time when I go there, I will be triggered by the memory. So avoidance and withdrawal. And affect dysregulation is very huge among our clients. A lot of out of control emotion, and they are labeled as rebels. A lot of our institutions label them as she is a very angry person. She's a very rebellious person. She doesn't listen to authorities. But there is a reason for why she is like this. So affected. These are the long-term impacts of trauma. We move on to the next slide. Now, I want to briefly share about the internal working model. How a young child builds a sense of emotional well-being through relationship with others. With the self, if there has been trauma, the child will ask the question, am I worthy of attention and love? If they have not received love, obviously they will ask for whether I'm worthy of love. Now, I have a grandchild and she's so secure. So when I look at her and when I compare her with my clients, I just think, oh my goodness, so much has been lost for them. So the question that they ask is, am I worthy of attention and love? Am I good enough? Why do people not love me? That's the question that they ask. Do I have a personal, safe, emotional space? That's the question about themselves. And the others, they will ask, to what extent are others trustworthy? Imagine somebody who doesn't have even a single friend. So sad to live in this big world where there's not a single friend. What support can I expect? Will others help me express emotions? How do relationships work? The child doesn't understand how relationships work. This child has never experienced a good relationship or a bad relationship. It's always been ambiguous, sometimes good, sometimes bad. And then the world. How safe is the world out there for me to explore? How can I be encouraged to find out about how the world works? Can I feel confident enough to explore on my own over time? I think that there is no place where they even think about exploring the world because they're so lost in themselves. They have not climbed up the ladder beyond themselves because the trust is lost completely. So this is the internal working model of a child. Um, Whether the child has all of it, if the child has received all of this, they're on a good trajectory. But if they have not, they go through a very difficult time. So what are the factors which impact trauma response? Now, at the onset, I want to say that everyone responds to trauma different. One of my clients who was inappropriately touched was not traumatized by the touching, but by the death of the mother. In fact, actually, I think she underwent, I don't remember very clearly, but she went through rape, I think. I'm not very sure, but it caught me unawares because for me, in my mind as a counselor, I thought that was the most traumatic thing for her. But in her mind, when I questioned her, what was the most traumatic incident? She said the death of my mother. So an incident can, we think that this incident could have been the most traumatic, but the child will decide what is most traumatic. And everyone responds differently. This child was able to brush away. Ha, hota hai, Didi. It's okay. But my mom's loss was the worst thing that happened in my life. So she was able to say that to me. And I was caught quite unawares and caught me off guard. Yeah. Factors impacting trauma responses, age and developmental stage. When the child is very small, their brains are still developing. If they undergo so much trauma, then it's like huge. The impact is very huge. Then the temperaments. Many of us are different. We all know how the one person will respond in the other person will. Belief about the level of danger faced during the event. What is their belief system? I will be able to do it. I will be able to, overcome this, or I will not be able to overcome their belief system. If they already have a trauma history, then it adds to the trauma history. Problems after the traumatic incident. If there is a good support system after the trauma, if there are people around the child to support the child and take care of the child, the impact is not so much. I lost my sister a few years back, and her child, younger daughter, was very small, but the family was there to take care of this child, and she's done so well. We know that because of the support system, she's been able to come through this whole thing. Then there are cultural influences. Some culture, ladies and girls are sent for things which are very inappropriate. It's very difficult to have a breakthrough there. So these are the factors which impact the trauma risk. Later, can we move on? So I want to do this brain and hand demonstration because I think that as workers working with children, this is a good demonstration for us to teach the children what happens in their brain. And especially when there is this emotional dysregulation, we can help them to understand. Many children don't understand why they are doing what they are doing and how do you overcome that. So I thought that we'll just take some time to uh, understand this brain and hand. So if you all don't mind, you'll have to follow my instructions. You'll have to hold your hand like this. Yeah. So you'll have to hold your hand like this. Now, you can teach this. I'm teaching you so that you teach your children. Okay. So this is your brain stem here. Your brain stem is here. So this is your brain stem. Okay. Now, this regulates all your survival skills, like your basic eating, you go a toilet, wanting to go to the toilet, you're hungry, your sleep, all of it is regulated with your brain stem. This is your limbic system. in this. So the limbic system is inside, okay, inside. And this one, these four fingers which cover your limbic system is your cortex. It's a very simple method to teach the children how the brain looks. So I teach the children when I'm counseling them that this is your brain stem. All your basic uh, skills like eating, pooping, all of it happens through this. And this is your limbic system, the emotional brain. This is the emotional brain, takes control of all your emotions. And this is your cortex, that is your thinking brain. Okay. Have we all got it? Show me a thumbs up if you have got it. Now the teacher mode in me has come up. Okay, so this is the limbic brain, the emotional brain. This is your thinking brain, the cortex, this one. Okay. Now I tell the children that this brain development happens from bottom. And this is not fully formed in them. The thinking brain is not fully formed. And I tell them that it will, yeah, till the age of 25 ye growth hoga tumhare mein. Then I tell them that, you know, your thinking is not yet proper. You operate out of your emotional brain. Many of the times they operate out of their emotional brain. So what happens when I, as a worker, let me just take an example of me being a child worker. I'm working with the children. This is my brain and this is the child's brain. The child is angry and throwing tantrums. So then what happens is the thinking brain is offline. It flips. And the child is operating out of the emotional brain. Now here, if I am the worker and if my thinking brain also flips and I work out of my emotional brain, so then what happens is jagada, fight. But if I am keeping my thinking brain on, thinking cap on, and I'm thinking, okay, this child's thinking brain is off. Let me just let the child cool down. No, let the child put on his thinking cap. And then I converse with the child, then I'm able to talk through the situation. I hope I'm able to communicate what I have wanted to. So, yeah, so this is a good example. So when the client comes to me after a fight or something, no, so I'll tell them, remember I taught you this. Now this is what has happened. Your thinking brain has gone offline. That is why you behave like that. So the child is also aware of why what has happened has happened. So we can teach our children. Not only teach our children, be aware of our own brains. We shouldn't flip our thinking brain. We have to put on our thinking caps and very calm, in a very calm way, respond with our children. Yeah. We'll move to the next. So, as we come to the end of this presentation, I want to talk about post-traumatic stress, the long-term impact on the survivors. Difficult feelings and thoughts caused by reminders of trauma, including memories of actual trauma or things that just remind the person of a trauma. It can be place, people, event, scent, sound. So all the senses are up when there is a very difficult thing that has happened. And what happens is their ability to trust people is lost. They are not able to trust people. So the children that, I won't say all the children, but some of our children whom we work with may be testing you also. When you are working with them, they will be testing you. Can I trust this Didi, or, I don't know what they call you. Will I be able to trust this person? So their ability to trust is lost. So they will be testing. Sense of personal safety. They will be thinking, at the background of their mind will be the question, am I safe with this person? And they will want to manage their emotions, but there will be dysregulation. These are all long-term impacts. They've lost their trust. Their safety is gone. They're not able to manage their emotions. not able to adjust to changes in life. And sometimes, we make big plans for our children that we should move this child from this place and send him to another organization. But we have to be very carefully doing it because sometimes it requires help to even adjust. So preparing the child that this may be a good option. What do you think? Take the child on board when we make, very good plans we come up with. But if we are not taking the child on board, then it becomes a little difficult for the child to adjust to life changes and also to respond to stress. As many times I joke with them that Didi also doesn't respond well to stress. I'm also like you, I tell them. So, they're able to understand that, yeah, stressful situations can be difficult and they need help when they go through stressors of life. These are all the long-term responses to trauma. I think we have one more slide, maybe. Yeah, I think we'll go to this in the next session. We have 10 minutes, so we can have some question Q&A or anything that I have shared and you want me to elaborate on, I'll be happy to.
We can do questions and then you can do the deep breathing one exercise also.
Yeah. Questions.
If anybody in the Zoom has a question for Rabina ma'am, please feel free to ask. You don't have to put your video on. You can stay. You won't come on screen. You'll remain private, so nobody will. You'll be anonymous, as it were.
There's a question on how long does it take for a child to overcome the trauma. So this will depend on many factors. If they have a good support system, their own personality, if they're a go-getter, and if their belief system, and at what age, what was the onset, the age at the onset of trauma. So a lot of factors will depend on how long will it take for the child to overcome trauma. But in my opinion, a good support system, helps them overcome trauma faster. Even in therapies, we have seen that, there are a lot of modalities, but the therapeutic alliance is the key. When there is a good therapeutic alliance, everything else falls into place.
Maybe you explain what is therapeutic alliance, Rabina?
So the relationship between the counselor and the client. If the client is able to, trust the client, so much so that she's able to bring everything that she's going through, he or she is going through to the table, knowing that the counselor will accept him or her non-judgment, without any judgment, and the counselor will be honest, saying that I don't have the answers, maybe, or I have the answer and I'm willing to walk with you. That is a very important factor.
The question, how do you help your child in a dysfunctional family where you don't meet them regularly to have a significant impact?
If we don't meet them, then I think we'll have to connect them with somebody at least who will be able to meet with them. Or I don't know. I've not experienced this scenario, so I may not be an expert, but I think a connection is required. Alita, what do you think?
Yeah, the main thing is that there has to be consistency. That is very important for any relationship to develop. There has to be consistency. And you can't do it alone. There has to be family support. So if you're counseling the child only, that's not enough. You need to involve the family also.
Sometimes children are scared for parents to know what they're going through. So can they talk to others? Yeah, definitely. I think that option should always be there for them to be able to talk to somebody whom they can trust. Many of our children are not very comfortable talking to their parents. So I think That's very, but
Yeah.
they have to recognize the right person. Alita, you were saying something.
No, the next question is behavioral changes. Can behavioral changes be treated? A sweet child turns into a child who say lost his sweetness and become very rude and rough. Rude and rough, yeah. So can you change these behavioral changes? Can you treat the behavioral changes?
Yeah, I think
So
we'll have to go into the root of why there's a behavior change. So in the next session, we will be looking at a very important question that we will need to ask when we are working with the children. Because many of the behavior is understood from our own lens. But why is the child behaving in the way that the child is behaving is something that we need to understand. And for me, it's very sad if a sweet child turns into a rude child. And there is a reason for the child to become like that. So I will be interested in knowing what has caused the change. In fact, the children are good in telling us why they've become like that. They are experts.
I think if there are no more questions, maybe we can, Rabina can just do a deep breathing exercise before we close.
Yeah. So in the next session, we will be doing stabilization and say the child needs to feel safety and stabilization. That's the first treatment for any trauma treatment. So we will do some deep. One of the things that we teach is deep breathing. I know if you all have practiced it anytime before, but it's a good technique to help your child calm down when they are feeling very hyper, or they're having some sort of anxiety when they're going for their exams, or some commitment, like, you know, when they have to go up to the stage and speak. So they have to do some speech. Children get anxious, we get anxious. So it's a good technique to calm us down. So we do teach them deep breathing. There are many ways to do deep breathing. You can look up different techniques, but one of the ways that we teach them is that you inhale through your nose to the count of 4. As I count 1, 2, 3, 4, you inhale through your nose and then you exhale through your mouth at the count of 4, 3, 2, 1. And as you're doing, I want you to keep one hand on your chest and the other hand on your belly, because oftentimes we are not breathing correct. We have a very shallow breathing. When you breathe in, your stomach should inflate or it should go in. It should inflate like a balloon. Okay, the stomach should come out like a balloon. So the reason why I'm asking you to put your hand on the tummy is that you will be able to feel whether the tummy is coming out or not. So as you breathe in, your tummy should come out, and as you breathe out, your tummy should go in. Got the instructions? So as I count, you can close your eyes so that you're not distracted. Your eyes closed. To the count of 1 to 4, you breathe in slowly. And 4 to 1, when I count, you breathe out slowly through your mouth. We'll start. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in. 4, 2, 4, 3, 2, 1. Breathe out. We'll do it again. When I say 1, 2, 3, 4, you breathe in. 4, 3, 2, 1, you breathe out. Very slowly at your own pace. There's no hurry. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. I hope you felt your stomach go in and out. That's one way of breathing. When you're teaching the children, no, you can, this gets a little difficult for children. So you teach them the flower breath. You hold your hand like this, as though you have a flower in your hand. And you teach the children to smell the flower. And then exhale. And inhale. And exhale. This is easy for the children. They will do it very happily when you teach them that there is a Just imagine that you have a flower in your hand and you breathe in and you breathe out. Then there is something called the bunny breath. The bunny breath is you imagine that there is a rabbit. And how would the rabbit breathe? Does anybody know? The rabbit will go like this. Okay? Have you all ever seen it? Go check out today. It's your homework for today. Okay? So we teach the children, this is the bunny breath. So we'll ask them to do it. And then breathe out. Okay? And if you're asking them to do deep breathing, if there is a child who has some medical issues, be careful about not asking them to do these breathing exercises. May not be good for them to do. Then we'll do some other exercises, which I'll teach in the next session. So I think looks like the last session was too heavy. Don't want to overwhelm us, but for me, I'm personally convinced that if we don't actually look at our own lives and understand pain from our own lives, we will never be able to understand the pain of the others. So generally, when we do this session on trauma, I make them do an activity. And since we have an hour, I'm wondering if I can take some time to get you to do the activity. Can I? It will take some, maybe 5-10 minutes. Yeah. Okay. So this activity is to do a timeline. What I want you to do is, if you have a paper and a pencil or a pen, think of your life. Just draw one. Maybe I should demonstrate it to you. Take a paper and maybe just draw one line across. One line. And starting from your birth. So here you have 0. And the end you will have whatever is your age here. Okay. So from 0 to 10, just mark one small column. From 10 to 20, mark another column. And 20 to 30, and so on. Tens, in tens, you mark the timeline. And what I want you to do is think of your life from 0 to 10. And write down, don't stress yourself too much. I don't want you to be stressed. Just think of whatever you can remember. Just put down those key things, like I went to school maybe, or whatever. So 0 to 10, this happened. And then from 10 to 20, the key things that happened in life. 20 to 30, what are the key things that happened in life? The good and the bad. So we are at 12:18 now. Maybe I'll give 10 minutes. At 12:28, we'll get back and see how it is going. Don't want to rush this very important activity.
If everybody is done, we can start. We can start. Yeah, Rabina, over to you.
Yeah. So, how was the experience? I don't want to know what you've written, but the experience itself, how was it?
Really good one, ma'am. Never thought like writing like this, but it's a new experience. We were able to go back and think of goods and bads. Sometimes we don't do like this, but this is specifically writing in this manner is different. Sometimes we sit and think, but we forget. But this was something different, like specifically at that time we were, thinking and writing.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. Does anybody else want to share?
I think two things that I felt. One thing was like Blessy Sister shared. Sometimes you can be so consumed with all the bad things that have happened that when you sit and think, oh, actually there were good things. But the other thing was like there's some 10 years where very few major life things seem to have happened. And then there's another group of 10 years where it's like the list, you're like, oh, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And suddenly you're like, wow, that was a pretty difficult 10 years. So many things changed in that time. So it's a very helpful, reflective exercise. So thank you.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Also, ma'am, I was I noticed like suddenly in some place I felt, oh, that 10 to 15, like it was so difficult. But suddenly I remember, oh, after that, after the, you have mentioned 10 to 20 or 20 to 30. So in the half time, it was really, very struggling or something. But suddenly I felt, no, next half was totally different for me. So that was also there.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. So this is a very good exercise for us to reflect. And we have a lot of good memories, but we also have some small, not very pleasant memories. The clients that come to us have a lot of difficult memories, um, especially for us who are going to different homes, institutions to counsel the clients. They come with a lot of difficult memories, and it's very difficult for them to do this exercise. I'm so happy to hear that it's a good exercise for all of us. But we have to remember that sometimes when we ask our children, it may not be a very pleasant exercise. And we have to help them to walk through that which they have gone through. It helps us to understand that not everybody has gone through the same good times as me. And this world is very broken. I'm totally so broken, but the good news is that the Redeemer lives. That is the good news. So we have to keep telling our children that the Redeemer lives. He will see us through. So this is one exercise which, can help us to understand our children. You can do this with your children as you meet them. If you have time with them, if you have a relationship, remember I told you that healing always happens in the context of relationship. If there is no relationship, it's a very bad exercise to do. So please don't do the exercise if there's no relationship. But if there is an exercise, if there is a relationship, and you can tell them that I'm curious to know what happened between the age of 10 and 20. Is there something you would like to share? And go with a mind of curiosity, not because I want to fix your problem. No, because we may not have the answers for all their problems. We may not. But with a mindset of, I'm curious to know if I can help or can I get you connected with someone. So this is a good exercise, which helps us also to know the trauma, specific trauma that anybody has gone through, because that is something that they will remember. Okay, now let's go on to our next session. The principles of trauma-informed care. Trauma-informed care is an approach for interacting with survivors of trauma. It is not a form of clinical therapy. No, it's not. It is simply about understanding survivors' experiences so that we can engage with them that in a way that is sensitive and supportive of their journey and recovery. So it's not a clinical therapy. I want to reiterate that fact that it's not a therapy, but it's a approach to help to understand our clients and help them where possible, support them, stand with them, be sensitive to them. So knowing that healing begins in relationship, that has to just, be written here. For all who are working with people, everyone who's working with people, I think we need to remember that healing begins in relationships. If we do not have the warmth, if I'm very cold, then I cannot have a relationship. I need to be warm. I need to be supportive for people to be able to approach me. Recognize that all behavior has meaning. The question that was asked in the previous session, can this behavior be changed? No, there was a question like that. So we have to recognize that every behavior has meaning. There is no behavior which is meaningless. Every behavior has meaning. Understand that symptoms are adaptations. Why are some children showing some symptoms? The classic example is if you've heard something called dissociation. Some children will just dissociate and they will not be in themselves. It'll look as if they are somewhere away. No? And we have to bring them back to the present. Sometimes we also do that. When somebody is speaking and we find it very boring, we switch off, and that is at a very mild level. But children learn this mechanism called dissociation because their pain is so much. So they learn dissociation so that they can cope with what is going on in their lives. So every symptom is an adaptation to what they are going through. Seek to comfort and not control. As elders, many times we feel that we should control the situation. Just yesterday, my daughter, who's a special educator, was telling me about one of her child. She's saying that this child is an autistic child and she just throws temper tantrums and is very difficult to control. And all the other teachers are trying to hold her, and she's quite big built. And my daughter was not in the class, and then when this happened, she was called because she's the class teacher, and she was telling Mama, when I went to the class, I'm looking at all the teachers holding her from one direction to the other direction, and I just told her that, can you please sit down? I want to talk to you. Can you please sit down? And I asked the teachers to all go from there. So the child actually sat down. So it was, I felt that that was a good example where the teacher is not trying to control the child, do this. So the other teachers told her that, no, you're always giving in to her behavior. But according to her, that worked. So we don't have to control, we don't want to control situations. We need to comfort them when they're going through whatever they're going through. Build on strengths and not weaknesses. In the Indian context, we always highlight weaknesses. I don't know how the context is outside, but in India, we are so quick to build on we highlight the weaknesses, but I think we have to build on strengths, appreciate. One of the skills of communication, good communication, is appreciation. So appreciate them for their strengths. So build on their strengths. So these are the foundations. These 5-6 points that are mentioned here, the foundations of the trauma-informed care. So we want to put on this lens, the trauma lens, and look at every child with the trauma lens. We in our organization, we always show them this PPT and tell them that we have to change your outlook. We have to change our perspective. We cannot go there as, I know it all and I cannot go as an expert. No, we will have to look at the children from their trauma perspective and understand what is it that they have gone through. So wearing the trauma lens, we will have this conversation and lead forward and help them, guide them in whatever they're going through. So going back to the case, Emma's case, what practical steps would you take to help the following child? Now, we saw Emma's case that her parents are divorced. So we saw the symptoms. We saw that she's complaining of stomach pain, and she's crying, and she rarely smiles, and she bursts into tears even though she's good at coloring. Her mom says she has no medical issues. In such a scenario, wearing the trauma lens, what would be the practical steps that we can take? I'm going to give you the answer, but I want to know what is the answer from your side. How would you help the child? Keeping the principles in mind. She could have something belonging to mom to hold on to in the Sunday school. Excellent. Very nice. Anything else? I don't think there's a wrong answer. You can just try sharing. We'll also learn. I'm sure it's happening. The teacher could visit her at home. Yeah, definitely. We always tell everyone that it takes a community to build a child. It takes not only the parents. Mom could also sit in the class for a few weeks. What else? Alita, can you go back to the previous slide? The previous one. So keeping in mind these principles, knowing that healing begins in relationships, can we start building a relationship with Emma? Being the teacher, can we start just a little more than the teaching of the Sunday school? How are you? Can you, do you want something to eat? Or teachers brought a chocolate for you. If it is allowed, some places it's not permitted. So within the policies, you can check how you can build a relationship and get curious about her behavior and ask the child. I'm observing that you're not like you always used to be. Can you tell me if you don't mind? I'm there for you. Seek to comfort and not control. Teacher is always there for you. Oh, you're so good at coloring. She's crying. When she's coloring, when the color goes out, she's crying. And you're so good in coloring. I can never do this. You're so good. So, using these principles, we can work on helping the child. Sharing a snack with her. Yeah, very nice. Within the principles and policies, yeah. Please let's keep that in mind, because every organization has policies about what you can share and what you cannot. So yeah, these are all very good things that we can do. Yeah? And follow these principles to build a relationship. Yeah, let's go back to that slide. Yeah, so Emma's problem. Now, any trauma treatment, yeah, we've discussed Emma. Yeah. So practical steps, these are the steps that we could do. Any trauma treatment model will have all of these components. Aims to avoid re-victimization. Now, in our experience, we have seen that in the institution also, sometimes we victimize the children and the client. With what we say in our body language, sometimes some statements that we make victimizes them. So we have to be extremely careful to avoid that. It appreciates many problem behaviors began as understandable attempts to cope. So if a client of mine tells me that I have smoking issues, I don't look at it as a problem behavior, but I look at it as Okay, tell me, I look at it, I get curious, and I tell my client to tell me when it started and why it started, because I want to know that what was it that they were trying to cope with when they started this problem. So I'm not saying that all of it is like that, but most of our clients have problem behaviors because of trying to cope with certain situations. So appreciate many of the problem behaviors as attempts to cope. Strives to maximize choices for the survivors and control for the over the healing process. We have to give them choices. Okay, you have tried this. This is not working. Can we try something else? If you don't mind, let's try this. Understand each survivor in the context of life experiences and cultural background. Sometimes I feel that, I can, we are all very quick to say, well, I never went through that. Why are you going through that? That's not right. Understand each survivor in the context of their experience. What have they experienced? What is their cultural background? Each person comes from a different background. So we can never totally understand them. And therefore, trauma treatment tries to understand them from all of these perspectives. Yes, Anita. The three-phase model of trauma. This is a basic trauma treatment model by Judith Herman. Safety and stabilization is always muted. Yeah. So the first step is always safety and stabilization. And after we do safety and stabilization, then there is processing of traumatic material. What I did with you today is some amount of processing, the timeline. But if you've observed, I did the deep breathing, all of that in the first session. That is a safety and stabilization process, and the processing of the traumatic material comes after that. And then there is reconnection and reintegration. But processing of traumatic material and reconnection and reintegration are very large subjects, which we're not going to look at today. We're only going to look at safety and stabilization because that needs specialized care. So today we will look at safety and stabilization. How do we help our clients or our children to be safe and stable? Now, first thing that we have to remember is that all behavior has meaning. For this, we need to understand that triggers are an important part of understanding the meaning behind survivors' behavior that is impacted by their trauma. Now, every time, I hope you know what is a trigger. I'll explain what is a trigger. Every behavior is triggered because of something which has happened in the past. Therefore, it's very important to understand what is the trigger. Now, Alita, can you go to the next slide so that I'm able to share what's a trigger and then explain. So trigger develops as a result of traumatic experience. It's a false alarm. It's not the real alarm. It's the false alarm when we see, hear, feel something that reminds us of the scary things that have happened in the past. For example, one of my acquaintances, her son, recently she shared with me this incident. She said that they live in, in Bombay, you have a lot of chawls. So she lives in one of those chawls and they have these blue sheets which are tied up above their house roofs. She was telling me that her son, who's an engineer by profession, she said that my son was very scared when he heard the flapping of the blue sheet. So I was asking her what happened. Why is he scared of that? He's such an old boy. And then she was telling me her story, and apparently the father has committed suicide. So he was triggered with this loud sound, and he was not, for him, that past became the present. So this is a false alarm. Am I able to say what are you able to understand? Okay, so it's a false alarm. So you get triggered. Now, what has happened now is not scary. And that boy, in the real sense, is a smart guy. So for me to understand it, I was like, why would he get scared? So I got very curious and I asked the mother what happened and how it is set into order and all of that. Then the mother told me that this is his experience and this is what has happened. So anything that causes us to go back to something that's happened in the past, scary things that have happened in the past. It can be a smell, for girls who have been raped, and the person who's raped them has some sort of a scent. Now, the smell of that anytime can trigger that same memory. So it's a false alarm, and it sets off an action, a process, or series of events. Can be fear, it can be panic, agitation, etc. But it's specific to an individual. What triggers me may not trigger you. What triggers you may not trigger me. So a good question to ask is, what makes you feel scared, upset, angry, and causes you to go into crisis? That's a very good question to ask anybody who's dysregulated. You feel that they are showing some symptoms which are away from the baseline. This is a good question to ask. What makes you feel scared, upset, angry, and causes you to go into a crisis? And so how do you manage these triggers? Alita, the next slide. There are three things that we have to help our clients with. In order for them to manage the triggers, we have to help them with three things. First of all, we have to help them to identify what are the triggers. For everyone, it will be different. Like for me, for quite some time, when I used to come home and I used to find the house messy, I would be triggered. So it can be anything. So now identify your own triggers. What is causing you to be triggered? That's the first thing. Then identify what are the early warning signs of being triggered. Now, as soon as you're triggered, what do you do? Like for me, if I would come, now I'm much better. Now I just have learned to cope with my triggers. But what do you do when you're triggered? So as soon as I come home and if the house is in a mess, I would just go on a rant. I'm like, why is the house like this? The way I left it, it's the same, blah, blah, blah. So identify your early warning signs of being triggered. And then the last thing that we have to do is identify positive strategies for coping. These are the three things that we need to identify. Now we can teach our clients this. We can teach our children this. When they are triggered, we can ask them to identify these things. We'll go through each of them individually. Before that, understanding emotions, we asked them previously, like I said, what makes you feel upset, scared, or sad? What makes you happy? They will tell you. But what makes you feel upset, scared, or sad? It's a difficult question. It takes time for them. How do you know you are angry? My children know when I'm angry. So we have to be aware of how do I know when I'm angry? What reminds you of bad things? Those are the triggers. What helps you calm down when you are upset? What does not help you? Somebody tells me calm down, no, I get more irritated. When I'm upset and somebody tells me just calm down, I get more irritated. So we have to know ourselves. What helps you calm down? What doesn't help you calm down? All of these things are good questions for us to ask to understand the person's emotions. So the common triggers, these are the common triggers. Any child or any adult, these are the common triggers. Not being listened to. If just imagine yourself, if suppose nobody is listening to you, how would you feel? Same thing goes for the child. Not being listened to. Lack of privacy. You put them, with everybody. So children don't mind actually, but this is a common trigger. Feeling lonely. I think loneliness is going to be very soon called a disease. So feeling lonely, darkness, being teased, feeling pressured, people yelling. How much we yell at our children. So bad. It's very bad for them. Particular time of the day or night. Yes? Suppose there is a rape which the child has gone through. Nights will be extremely difficult for them. Suppose some child has gone through they will remember particular things. Like I often share about this client of mine whose mom passed away on a festival day. So that festival is a trigger for always. She hates it. It's a festival celebrated by everybody, but she doesn't like it because it was a most difficult time for arguments, being isolated. In many homes, we see that one of the discipline measures is isolate the child and put the child in one corner. It can cause trigger. Being touched. We have to be extremely sensitive when we are working with children about how we are touching them. Loud noises, not having control, being stared at, room checks in homes, especially. Contact with family sometimes is a big trigger for them. Large men, can be large women also. So these are the common triggers. So identify what are the common triggers. Alita, can we move to the next slide? What are the early warning signs? Early warning signs are signals of distress that is a physical precursor or manifestation of being upset. Like I shared about myself, no? The early warning sign is before I enter the house, I'm already thinking how messy the house is going. So, the early one, things that happen before it's actually happening. It is what happens before you are triggered. Some signals are not observable, but some are, such as restlessness, agitation, pacing, shortness of breath, sensation of tightness in the chest, or sweating. So these are early warning signs. You can ask the children, what happens? Do you feel restless? Do you feel, there's some sort of agitation? Do you feel your heart is pacing at a very fast rate? You can ask them questions and they will share. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. Coping strategies. Now, this is the last thing in the three. Identify triggers, identify early warning signs, and then identify positive coping strategies. These are strategies which can help the individual to become calm. And it is helpful to minimize stress. So different people have different coping strategies. For me, exercise is not a very healthy, positive coping strategy. But for my friends, it's very positive coping strategy. So whatever works for a particular individual, that is their healthy, positive coping strategy. Taking time away from stressful situation. In our organization, we always have time away. Like we do retreats, we have days of self-care. We have every quarter we have a self-care day. So time away from our stressful situation. Going for a walk, it helps to be within nature, looking at the trees, talking to someone who will listen. Working out, definitely for me, this doesn't work, but for others, it may work. Listening to a peaceful music, taking a nap. Now, when we are in retreats, I just love sleeping. So it's a joke in my office that I love sleeping. So whatever works for you, that is your coping strategy. Reading a book. For many people, reading is very helpful. Pacing or rocking. Coloring is very helpful. Deep breathing, writing a journal, praying, and anything that works for you. Like for us, we all share with one another because we are counselors. So, we can ask these questions to one another and we share with one another. What is the new thing that you did this month? And what is the new thing? What is one thing that you've done which has worked for you? So these are strategies which we can teach our children so that at an early stage, early age, they're able to, learn what is helpful for them in a stressful situation and keep practicing them. We can move to the next slide. So for purposes of identifying trauma and its adaptive symptoms, it is much more useful to ask this question. What happened to this person rather than what is wrong with this person? We generally will ask, what is wrong with you? Very automatically it comes. What's wrong with you today? That's the auto mode. But a good question to ask is, what happened to you? What happened to this person? It helps us to be kinder to the other person. So for people working with trauma, it's a good question to ask. What happened to this person? Yes, Alita. So resilient survivors continue, therefore, to grow and even thrive in spite of and quite often because of their histories. In our journey from 2012, I think we began this journey of working with trauma victims. We have seen many, many resilient survivors, many. And some of them just amaze us. Some of their stories is so amazing. They grow and thrive in spite of all that they have gone. Oh, it's not we cannot say that, it's a hopeless situation out there. No, we are going to be the agents of hope in our children and at the world at large. I think that's where God has placed us. And we need one another. I don't think we can do it alone. We need one another. We need people who can spur us to action, who can encourage us and lead us on and guide us. So this is a beautiful journey that we have gone through, and we're so happy to share what we have learned. We've not reached or arrived. We're still learning, but this is what we have learned in our journey. Thank you. I think we have 15 minutes more. I want to teach one exercise. Alita, you want to say something? So there's one more. Yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, questions. Okay, questions.
Questions, and then we can end with your exercise. No question. Any questions, anyone? You can type in the chat or unmute yourself and ask.
Yeah, I had a question. Actually, as Sunday school teachers, like we teachers ourselves, we also have been gone through traumas and all from our childhood, and still we are recovering. So, as a teacher, how can we ourselves get healed, and how can we heal the children too?
So, Sheetal, thank you for sharing. I think we all share the same story. We've gone through all of us have gone through something or the other. And we need people to walk with us where we are vulnerable, the first step is always to be able to share with a trusted person. Um, recently I was reading that the healing begins when we start sharing. We cannot keep it to ourselves. So I would say that all of us should have at least one person with whom we can share our lives and take support of that person and pray with them and ask God to bring healing. When we experience healing, we're able to pass it on to our children. And I think it's okay for us to say that I have gone through this. That takes time, but yeah. Alita, you want to add?
No, I just wanted to say that find a friend, be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Also, building trust is difficult because if you've been hurt in the past, but I think it's good to identify one safe person whom you can share and can start the healing process. Or you can also approach a counselor and start being counseled, yeah, for the trauma. But we always see that those who have gone through trauma are much better counselors because they understand pain in a deeper way. So never think of yourself less because you have gone through trauma, but always know that because of your understanding, you'll be a better Sunday school teacher.
Thank you.
How can we find counselors? Yeah, we have a list of counselors, so we can give you our email IDs or phone numbers, and then you can ask us. And in Bombay, we can help. Outside Bombay, also, we have our contacts and referrals. I think, Rabina, you can, yeah, start. Then you can spotlight Rabina.
So I just want to teach one more small exercise which you can teach your children also. It's called the grounding exercise. A simple way to remember it is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You just tell them to remember 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So what are the 5 things that you can see? What are the 4 things that you can hear? Here you're using all your senses basically. So 5 things you see, 4 things you hear. What else is there, Alita? I forget my senses. Touch. 3 things you can touch. 2 things that you can taste of, and 1 thing that you can smell of. So the order can be changed. Okay, whatever works. Just remember that you're making use of all your senses. Now, this is a mindfulness exercise actually, especially when your children are very hyper or you yourself are very hyper and you seem to be lost, and you want to bring yourself, you ground yourself in the present, you do this exercise. So we will quickly ask them to tell us, okay, tell me what are the 5 things that you can see. So the child will tell, okay, I can see the fan, I can see the light, I can see the cupboard, I can see you. So the 5 things. Then what are the 4 things you can hear? What are the 3 things you can touch? What are the 2 things you can taste? Or what are the 1 thing that you can smell of? So that you using all your 5 senses, 5 senses. It's a very simple exercise to be grounding in the present, especially when the children go to the past. No, many children will go into their past, and that happened, and this happened, and so bringing them to the present can use this exercise called grounding. It's called the ground, and for all of us, this is for the children and for us, this exercise which I shared just now. One of the things that research is currently showing is the importance of writing a gratitude journal. Every morning when you get up, what is the one thing that you are so grateful for? I think all of us can start doing this exercise, especially because we get so tired. There are a lot of things which we can be unhappy about. But what is the one thing that we are grateful for? So maintaining a gratitude journal as you get up, what's the one thing that you're grateful to the Lord for? Oh, your life, your breath, the family, even a cup of coffee. So whatever you are grateful for. So very important. It's a good exercise. And research says that gratitude, having those who have had gratitude, they've done quite well in life. So maintaining a life of gratitude. I think that's very biblical also, that the Lord has done so much for us. And we need to be grateful for all his goodness in our lives. And in closure, there's one scripture that is being prompted for me to read, and I'd like to read it for us. It is from Isaiah chapter 58, where it says, the Lord will guide you always. Many times we may not know the answers, But the Lord will guide us always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land and strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings. No? Sometimes we think we are a small group. We may not be able to make so much difference. Or what does it matter? But I think we have to remember